Welcome to Australasian Airlines video tutorial on the iFly Boeing 737. This is the second video tutorial for the Boeing 737, and this stage we will go from takeoff until top of climb. Now, as you can see, we've loaded up on the runway at runway 21 of Perth, and this will be a Perth to Melbourne flight. So this particular video will go from takeoff to top of climb and show you basically what you need to be doing for the takeoff and getting the aircraft to its cruising level. So what you do is, prior to actually getting on the runway, so at the holding point, you would go in and you would turn your landing light on, taxi light off, and your strobe light on. So that would be position light would go to strobe and steady. So that will actually bring your strobe lights on as well as your nav lights on. And if it was at night, if you're doing flight at night, you'd already have your logo light on at the terminal, and at the holding point you would then turn your wing light on. So yeah, basically you just go through that again. You're at the holding point, your landing light on, which is this one here, taxi lights off, and your position to strobe, which is this one here, which goes all the way to up. So off in the middle, steady to the very bottom, and all the way to the top is your strobe and steady, and your landing lights are here, and taxi lights off in the up position. So that's pretty much all you have to do in the overhead. So you just double check everything. You make sure you get your course selected for your runway, which is 196. Speed 240, heading 196, altitude 35,000, and course 196. Auto brake set for RTO, flaps 5 degrees, auto throttle arm, and everything's looking good. So we're ready to go. So what you do is basically you now you can use the throttle quadrant if you want to increase your power. You'll see here just above the N1%, you've got the, in green writing, it's got 101.1. Okay, that's your N1 speed, so you won't actually go above that. Even if you use your throttle quadrant, you won't actually go above that speed with full power. It's automatically locked through the computer, so I won't actually go over that. The other thing you can do is using this little button here. It's called the takeoff go around. It's TOGA, takeoff go around. All you need to do is just release the brake and push that button there, and the engines will automatically spool up until they reach 101.1, which is the N1, and all you need to do then is just guide the aircraft down the runway. Basically what will happen is, once we actually get to rotate speed, we rotate, positive rate of climb, touch the brakes, gear up, auto brake off, flaps to 2 degrees, and then we'll actually turn the autopilot on, and I'll show you the stage of doing that. Now it's very important that when you actually come to turn the autopilot on, that you don't have any pressure on the yoke or the controls whatsoever. If there's any back pressure on the controls, it won't actually engage the autopilot correctly. So you've got to make sure that when you actually engage the autopilot, that you don't have your hands on the controls at all. So there, we'll go through that. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take off, and we'll actually get to rotate, and we'll climb out. So all we do is release the brake, hit the takeoff go around, and you'll see the engines will actually spool up. So you can see here the engines are spooling up, and we'll start rolling down the runway. So you just guide it down the runway, keep control of it as you're going down the runway, keep it on the runway center line as best as possible. Obviously if you've got crosswinds and whatnot, that'll make it a lot more difficult. But yeah, we'll just bring it up to V1. You'll hear the V1 call out, and after V1 you just hit, it just rotates, so just slight back pressure and take off. So there's the V1. There's the rotate, so up we go. We've got a positive rate of climb, so touch the brakes, gear up, auto brake off, flaps to 2 degrees, hands off the controls, and then all you do is hit the CMDA, LNAV, and VNAV. Okay, once you get to 190 knots, flaps to 1. Okay, so just to recap, positive rate of climb, touch the brakes, gear up, auto brake off, flaps to 2 degrees, and then CMD A, LNAV and VNAV, making sure that you've got no pressure on the controls. Okay, so again we've got an FMC message, so we just click that, we go into the FMC, and it's just saying thrust required because our airspeed's come down a bit. Nothing you can do about that, that's all just being controlled by the FMC, so we just click clear the message, close that down, and we're on our way. Now as you can see, as long as all these lights are on and you've programmed the FMC correctly, you're flying completely on the FMC now. So it's doing its turn, it's climbing, it's maintaining its speed, it's doing everything for you. So all you have to do is just do your flaps and your gear. So we've now reached our max gear speed, max flap speed. So we make flaps all the way up at 220 knots. As you can see here on the primary flight display, it actually has all the flap speeds on there for you, so you know when to actually put the flaps up. Okay, so we're climbing out beautifully. Just checking all our engine information here. Make sure that we haven't got any low oil pressure or high oil temp, and just checking all that. And as you can see, our N1 94.5. Now that's now come back to what our thrust reduction was set for in the FMC, which was 1,500. Okay, so now we're just going to climb all the way up to 35,000. It'll just follow the plan. Now with this here, these buttons here, just leave that on map. You can change it if you want to, but I find it's easier if you just leave it on map. And this here, you can use this. This will actually change the actual the zoom on the map. So you can go all the way out to 640 miles, or you can just have it to 5 miles. So it'll actually just show you what's coming up next. It's got your waypoint here, so it tells you what your next waypoint is. Now if you want to make these screens bigger, just have to click on them, make them bigger, click on them to put them back in again. So I'll just bring it up. So you've got your ground speed, your true airspeed, your wind is 111 at 8, so that tells you your wind and what direction it's coming from. This is your track magnetic, 107, 108 as we're turning. You've got your next waypoint up here in magenta. It tells you what time you'll get there and your distance in nautical miles. You can see on here, this is your aircraft. This triangle represents your aircraft. The magenta line represents your actual nav line. And you've got your ADF, which was our NDB frequency for Perth. And as we get closer to Melbourne, which will be on our descent sort of thing, on our top of climb, we can then tune that to the Melbourne. And this is our VOR frequency, which we put in for our ILS, which was 109.50 for our departure. As we get closer to our top of descent, which will be in our third video tutorial, we'll go through that, checking the weather, seeing what runway will be our arrival, and we can program the aircraft for our arrival. So that's pretty much all there is to it. This is our this cyan or blue line here is our NDB, so that's actually the tail of the NDB, so it's actually got the arrow pointing down, which means the NDB is behind us. So we're now going following our nav line here. Okay, once we get above 10,000 feet, you open up the overhead, landing light off and strobe light off, so just put the nav light back to steady, and then that's it. That's all you really need to do. The aircraft will fly itself all the way up to 35,000, and up we go. So that's pretty much all you have to do there. Just have to monitor it. Now if this VNAV or LNAV light, quite often you might find the VNAV light will go out. Now particularly if there is a strong crosswind, more so in the actual cruise than the actual climb, and especially in the descent too. If you have a lot of wind, it can actually interrupt your airspeed. Now if your airspeed goes over the maximum airspeed, you'll actually get the FMC will disconnect. You'll get what's known as an overspeed disconnect. You'll get a warning message here for FMC. You open up the FMC and down here it'll say overspeed disconnect, and this VNAV light will go out. Now it's important that you actually get your speed sorted out. You don't have too much of a problem in the climb, but if you do find that in your cruise or descent you have an overspeed disconnect, you just have to add some spoilers to actually get the speed down, and then you'll be able to get the VNAV light back on. But other than that, we just keep climbing up. Now, even though we've programmed the FMC for 10,000 feet as the transition altitude, unfortunately Flight Sim is defaulted at 18,000. We always program it for 10,000 or for whatever hemisphere we're flying in, but we'll have to just remember that we do have to wait till we get to 18,000, which is the Flight Sim default. So once we get to 18,000, you'll be able to reset your altimeter to 1013. Just by pushing the B key on your keyboard. Other than that, that's all looking good. Everything's sweet. Just continuing to climb up. So I'll just go quiet for a few minutes, and you can just watch the aircraft as it's climbing, and just get familiar with what the systems look like. Okay, you can see we've now reached 18,000, so we can just reset the altimeter, and as you can see, this is now changed to 1013 HPA. So that's now set for our cruising altitude, which is basically anything above in Flight Sim world, anything above 18,000 feet. You're now set to the cruising altimeter. So we're just cruising up. As you can see here, our next waypoint is PIY, 26 miles to go. So if we go into our FMC, it actually shows you here. It actually lights up, same as on the multifunction display. It'll actually have up in magenta, same as in the FMC. It'll actually have a magenta to state what's the next waypoint. So it's all visual, so you can actually see what's happening. So again, we've got 23 miles. It's showing on here 23, and once we actually get to Pingelly, PIY will have 15.5 tonne of fuel on board. This is our current fuel status, 15.7. At Pingelly, PIY will have 15.5, and then it's just got the next waypoint after that, which is Burgoo. So yeah, basically we're just climbing all the way up to flight level 350. Once we get to flight level 350, we're in the cruise. We really can't do a lot from there except monitor the system. So we'll just end the video tutorial at the top of climb, and the next video tutorial will pick up probably just prior to our top of descent. So we'll go through checking our weather for our arrival, programming our FMC and everything for our arrival. And you can see how that all works. Yeah, what we'll do is we might just end the video here because you know, basically it's just going to continue to climb up to 35,000, and then it'll just the aircraft will just level off at 35,000. So we'll end the tutorial here, and the next video will pick up prior to our top of descent, and we will we'll go through programming the aircraft and setting it up for our descent and our arrival. but the aircraft will just continue to climb up to 35,000. It'll level off, and as I said, just keep an eye on this VNAV light. If it ever does go out, it means you've gone too fast on the speed. You've actually got an overspeed disconnect, so you just have to use your spoilers to bring that speed down and just get that VNAV light on. But other than that, from takeoff to top of climb, there's really not a lot to do. Basically, it's just all your takeoff stuff that you've got to watch. So just to recap on that, once you actually get to the holding point before takeoff, turn your landing lights on, taxi light off, and your strobe light on. Just double check the auto throttle is on. Auto brake will be set for RTO, and your flaps will be set for 5 degrees. You then taxi into position on the lining up. You then release the brakes. You can either use the throttle quadrant to increase your power, or you can just use this little takeoff go around switch here. Power up. As you get to V1 speed, it'll actually call it out. You'll actually hear V1. You can then just rotate, so pull back on the yoke or stick or whatever it is you're using, climb out. Once you get to a positive rate of climb, touch the brakes, gear up, auto brake off, flaps to 2 degrees, hands off the controls, CMD A, LNAV and VNAV, and then the aircraft will just take over from there. It'll just fly by itself, and just watch the speed here at 190 knots, flaps to 1 degree, and at 220 knots, sorry. So at 190 knots, flaps to 1 degree, and then at 210 knots, flaps up. And then it's just a matter of monitoring the aircraft all the way to top of climb, and then just monitoring it through the flight until prior to top of descent, which is where we'll pick up the next video. So yeah, we'll just end it there, and we'll see you in the next video tutorial prior to our top of descent. Okay, thanks for watching.